And we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Stripe Dev Chats. My name is Cecil Phillip, and I'm going to be your host today. If this is the first time that you've been in Dev Chats before, well, what we usually do is talk about a lot of the cool and amazing things that are happening in the world of Stripe. So definitely welcome. Glad you could be here, and hope you come around for like some more of the other ones that we plan to have in the future. Now, this month particularly is pretty special because what we're doing is we're taking the entire month and we're focusing on one of our products called Checkout. And in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, but Checkout is one of the most easiest ways for you to get started accepting payments in Stripe. I know I've used it in a couple of my apps and demos, and I know everyone loves it so much. So what we're going to do today is I have my friends here, CJ and Josh, and they're going to tell us a little bit about like what Checkout is, how does it work, and we can see some examples of how you can add it to your application. And then particularly too, there's some features here for SaaS founders. If you're working on a SaaS business or a company, there's some interesting features here that you might want to pay attention to. But before we dive into like what we're going to talk about, what do we do around the introductions, and we can kind of just get to know everybody and see what's going on. So CJ, you've been on the show before, but for kicks and giggles, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone? Let them know who you are and what do you do.
Yeah. Hey, friends. I'm CJ. I'm developer advocate here at Stripe, and I work on tons of video and demos to help you integrate Stripe so that you can accept payments or make payouts or generally manage your business online. I'm super excited to be here with Josh and Cecil today. So thanks again for having us back on.
For sure. And if you're subscribed to us on our Stripe Developer YouTube channel, you'll probably thumb scroll through and you'll see CJ's faces on like half of the videos. So, definitely appreciate CJ making the time to come over here and hang out with us today. Josh, why don't you introduce yourself today?
For sure. Thanks so much for having me on. My name is Josh, and I'm a product lead. I focus on our different checkout products. And I primarily focus my time working on Stripe Checkout, which is the product that we'll talk about today. I'm devoting my time at Stripe to figuring out ways to unlock potential for merchants of all different segments, but especially for SaaS founders. And we spend a lot of time on the checkout team building the easiest and most powerful way for you to get started with Stripe. So really excited to dig into that with all of you today.
Awesome. Well, Josh, again, I'm really glad that you can make it with us. Before we dive like really deep into like the topic, I'm going to pull up my screen. And I want to share like a couple of resources that I thought like people might be interested in learning about and hearing about. First off, shameless plug. Like I mentioned, like this is checkout month, right? So we have not just today, but we have an entire month where every week on every Wednesday, we're going to be having like different guests, people that are starting companies. We're going to have program managers and developers and like tons of amazing folks, open source folks, everyone that uses checkout, kind of sharing their experience from more of a developer perspective. So if you're interested in seeing like what are some of the other upcoming events that we have, you can check out the link that's showing right now on the bottom of your screen. And then you can see like, some of the guests that we have planned to come on and some of the other ones we have planned for the rest of the month. So again, really hope that you could, come out and spend some time with us and learn about, Stripe Checkout. Now, the next one I want to share with you all, again, if you're on our Stripe Developer YouTube channel, we actually have a really cool playlist that CJ developed. So obviously, I'm glad CJ is here. He can talk to you all about it for a little bit. But it's called Fundamentals of SaaS, right? And again, it goes through talking to us about like, again, as a SaaS developer or as a SaaS company, what are some of the things that I might be interested about, particularly when it comes to like the Stripe catalog to help me take my business to the next level. And CJ, maybe you could give us like a quick like elevator pitch about like what can folks expect when they take a look at these videos?
Yeah. So the fundamentals of SaaS will take you from zero to having a fully functioning software as a service business with subscriptions. We're building with Ruby on Rails in that series, and we use the PageM, which is a really powerful engine that one of our community experts has built. But something that I am really excited to share as part of the SaaS fundamentals is a lot of thinking about modeling your business and thinking about how you can actually unlock value for your subscription customers in order to maybe like optimize your revenue by providing annual prices in addition to monthly prices, and making sure that you're actually like creating those products and prices inside of Stripe so that they play nicely with things like checkout and the pricing table and the customer portal and all of these different components. So there's a lot of tips and tricks. It's really jam-packed. We talk about things like test clocks and lots of different features. So it is a little bit more in depth than what you might find if you were to just go through a single guide in the docs. And so, yeah, really excited to share that and hopefully find it useful. So there's a couple more episodes coming out soon. So yeah, we're up to episode 5 now.
Oh, that's awesome. Like, I love when you do videos like these, because kind of like what you said, like they augment the docs, right? Like they add that additional context. And then there's nothing like seeing someone do something versus me just reading it, right? So now I have like both resources. And I'm guessing too, we probably have like some code that's in there as well that folks could take a look at and play around with. So now I could read the thing, I could watch the videos, I could play around with the code, and I can get a very general experience about like what it actually feels like to like use some of these products.
Yeah, exactly. At the end, there's links to the repos. So if you want to head over and download those, you can start from where the videos left off and build your actual your business without having to worry about implementing any of that. So
nice. All right, we're gonna go on to the next one super quick. So again, in addition to those videos, CJ again, right, like has a series of blog posts. So if you head over to dev.to/Stripe, you know, under dev.to Stripe, we have a, I guess we call it like an organization or a community or whatever you call it on dev.to. We have a section for us where we create a lot of blog posts. And CJ has a series here where he does talk about, again, some of those things that as SaaS founders and SaaS companies, like some of the things that we should be thinking about. So, you know, if you click on one of the blog posts, you can see here, like it will link you to the other ones if you look at the top. And again, you can see like tons of, you know, he's up to 8 blog posts now. I think he's trying to go for a record. He might hit 10 by the end of the month. We don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But again, this is a great series if you're, again, interested in learning about that. And last link, really quickly, I want to share with you. So our friends over at Engine, so, you know, they're, I like to call them like friends.
Did we lose Cecil?
What? I'm here.
Oh, no.
I'm here. What happened?
Oh, you're okay. You cut out for a second.
Oh, did I? I'm like, what happened?
Yeah. Okay. No, we're back.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Well, I'm still here. So yeah, so our friends here at Engine, you know, they have this really interesting video talking about how you could use Stripe and metered billing to like help monetize your APIs. So imagine like you know, similar to Stripe, you might be like an API company who sells like a service, and maybe you sell your service, I don't know, like so many calls per month or so many calls per day or per minute, like whatever your cycle is. You know, you can use some of, you know, some of the tools that we have to help you build your customers, right? And then, so there's a really interesting video here where they talk about how they can do that with Azure API management and Stripe. So definitely hope that y'all check this out. I'm going to post all the links to the videos inside the chat, and we're going to try and get them in the description as well. So if you're watching this video later, make sure you check out the description. And if you're watching us live, they'll be inside of the comment section and the chat section as well. Now, enough of that. Enough of me. This is the part where I always say, like, this is no longer the session show, right? This is the checkout show. So let's talk about checkout. And Josh, again, as the PM for the product, what is like? Why don't you tell us a little bit about checkout and like what are some of the things that your team is really focusing on to make sure that people and developers and companies have a really good experience when they're starting to accept payments?
Absolutely. For a quick introduction, we think that Stripe Checkout will be the easiest and the most powerful way for ambitious businesses to accept payments. And when we're building Checkout, we're primarily thinking about this on 2 different axes. The first is we really want founders and engineers who are integrating Checkout to get more time. If you can integrate Checkout and free up your time and your mind space so that you don't have to focus on building payment flows, but instead you can focus on building and differentiating your own products and services, we consider that to be a really big win. The second thing that I want to acknowledge is that we're building Checkout so that you can actually make more money. We've seen that folks that come to Stripe and choose Checkout as their product offering to accept payments, they end up converting more buyers, they end up getting a higher average order value, and we even see higher lifetime values for customers when merchants choose Checkout. And so we're doing this by building, you know, the most powerful parts of Stripe directly into our Checkout product.
Nice. And so CJ, I know you also have some experience with Checkout too, right? Like,
I love Checkout. Checkout is such an amazing product. It's like, yeah, I mean, it takes away so much of the code that you would otherwise have to write with your own custom form. So you've really got like a couple of different options when you want to accept payment. Let's start with the easiest first, and that would be this no code option where you can share a payment link. So you can go directly to the Stripe dashboard. It takes 5 seconds. You can create a payment link, share that out anywhere you want. And what's awesome is that's powered by checkout under the hood. So even this no code option is actually checkout. And then if you want to sort of graduate to one level higher and write just maybe a little bit of code, then you can implement Stripe Checkout, which again is really, really straightforward and is getting easier to integrate every single day. In fact, like I feel like every time I turn around, I'm taking away arguments from my API call to actually like enable features, which is amazing. And you know, in the early days, you would create a checkout session on the server and then return its ID to the client, and you had to do a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of server. But now you can make an API call on the server to get back a checkout session and redirect to its URL. And there you are in checkout with tons and tons of functionality and power. So it is rock solid. But one of the messages that I want to make sure that you're hearing at home is that Stripe Checkout is not just for one-time payments. Stripe Checkout can be used to collect recurring payments. So you can set up subscriptions, and actually what's amazing is that even with the no code option with payment links, you can also start subscriptions. So you can just from the Stripe dashboard create a payment link and share that out to start a subscription. And what I wanted to show really quick, so on one of those blog posts.
Oh, sure. I can bring my screen back up. Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah. So on one of those
Okay.
blog posts, I can't remember which part it is in the series or whatever, but I talk about how you might build a pricing table. So building a pricing page with products and prices to show something like this. And with the new embeddable pricing table, even on dev.to, which is this blog platform where we posted this blog, I was able to embed a code pen right here where my products and prices are being fetched from Stripe. So I can just go in Stripe and change these products and prices. And now you can click on the buttons directly in dev.to and be redirected through the checkout flow. And all of this is powered by checkout under the hood. So yeah, it's an amazing product. I'm really, really happy that I get to use it and talk about it and build with it because it is so powerful. Okay, so I've got a couple demos, but I would love to hear if we could start maybe like, if we rewind the clock just a little bit before we launch this new trial thing, if Josh, like, I would love to hear your take because I definitely heard from users this ask. So maybe, yeah, if you could speak to just maybe kind of like what you were hearing about trials relative to subscriptions when you were talking with users. Yeah, that'd be helpful.
For sure. Even taking a step back and coming to one of the things that you shared a moment ago, CJ, one of the things that we are always thinking about is how we at Stripe can write code so that millions of merchants can then, get that functionality instantly, if not overnight, and begin to leverage brand new functionality from us without having to actually make code changes, or in some cases by getting to delete code that they've already written. You see us doing this time and time again when it comes to different customization options that we're packing into the checkout page and different features and functionality as well. For example, we had many, many businesses that were reaching out to us and saying, we want opportunities to upsell or cross-sell different products on our checkout page. This is functionality that we built in. We heard from different businesses that they wanted the ability to showcase different payment methods to buyers all around the world. So we ended up localizing checkout in more than 25 different languages. We have more than 20 different payment methods and a bunch of different express checkout options as well. So it's these kinds of features and functionality that you'll now get for free if you choose checkout. And one of those features, to bridge into what CJ was referencing, is we heard from many different merchants, especially recurring SaaS merchants, that they wanted the ability to create trials for their customers. And historically, we've allowed our businesses on Stripe to create trials and to collect payment details from their customers. This works today with Stripe Checkout out of the box. And one of the other flows that we wanted to enable was the ability for businesses to actually kick off a trial via Stripe Checkout and then collect those payment instrument details at a later date. Now, I want to take a step back and emphasize that the reason why we can build this functionality into Stripe Checkout and bring it to you so seamlessly is because when you choose Stripe Checkout and when you get started with Stripe, you're also getting a ton of other products under the hood. And one of those products, as CJ referenced earlier, is Stripe Billing. And so the combination here will now allow us to bring to you the ability to kick off trials via Stripe Checkout for recurring subscriptions, And you can get to choose whether, as part of that trial creation, you either collect payment instrument details upfront or you collect them at a later date. And so with that, CJ, do you want to take us through a quick demo of what that can look like?
Totally. Let's do it.
I love demos.
Yeah. So let's see. So we've got, I've got the Stripe CLI installed. So I can say Stripe samples create. One of the samples we have is called checkout single subscription. That's one of my favorites, obviously. It's the demo for starting a single subscription. We'll use Ruby today on the server, and we're going to CD into that new directory that was just created for us. Now, in the root of this project, we added a new thing called a sample seed.json. So let's open that up really quick. This is a fixture that you can use with the Stripe CLI that will automatically create the products and prices for you that work and play nicely with this specific demo. So if I go to my Stripe dashboard and I look at my products, right now I don't, you'll notice that the top one says donation. But if I say Stripe fixtures sample seed.json, that is going to create a starter product, a monthly price for that product, and an annual price, a pro product with monthly and annual prices. And if I refresh my Stripe dashboard here, I'm going to see some starter and professional products here. And they've already got sort of like a bunch of stuff set up for me. So that's kind of like a jumpstart tool that you can use with this sample. Now, if we jump into the demo, you'll see there's a client and server directory. The client, very simple, just a little bit of HTML, some JavaScript for display, and the server. It's got this .env file for managing our environment variables, our API keys, and we have server.rb, a little Sinatra app for running the server. So in the .env file, I'm actually going to set my price IDs from the Stripe dashboard that were just created as part of that fixture. So I'm going to grab my pro price here and drop that in. And now what we can do is look at the server. So if we jump into the server here, you'll notice there's a bunch of routes that are already sort of pre-configured for you. One of them is /config, and this is going to render back our publishable key and also a basic and pro price. And then we have this route here that accepts post requests and will make an API call to create checkout sessions. Here is the place where we're actually making our API call to Stripe, and we're passing along a couple of table stakes things that we always need with checkout sessions. And that is a success URL, cancel URL. This is the success URL is where the customer will be redirected after the customer has successfully paid. The cancel URL is if they choose to hit the back button and sort of bail out of the process, they don't want to actually subscribe, they'll be redirected there. We're setting the mode here to subscription because we want to collect subscription. You can enable automatic taxes by doing this. And we have some line items that are going to pass along our quantity and a price. We'll just leave it as is for now. We'll start up the server. Actually got to CD into the server directory, bundle, install any of those dependencies, and then we can say Ruby server to start it up. And if we jump into the server here, or like the actual demo, which is now running at localhost 4242, this is the sample. So now we can see we have the choice of starting with a starter or professional. This demo is not using the pricing table, so we're actually just sort of like hard coding products and prices here. And if we walk through the checkout flow right now, this is sort of the default that you would experience and see. So already from like 1 minute of installing a sample, creating products and prices, we're up and running, and we have like a product that we can charge $12 a month for. Pretty awesome. So what we want to do, like the end goal here, is that we actually want to start a trial, and we don't want to have like require the user to enter all of these details for their card information or their bank account details, because oftentimes we hear that conversion might be a little higher into trial if there's no card up front or no payment details up front. So what we can do is now we can jump into that server file, and where we're making the API call to create the checkout session, we can pass a couple of new arguments here. So subscription data is a sub hash that we can pass. And anytime you see this underscore data on a property or on an argument to the API, that means that we're going to be creating subordinate objects. So this is the data that's going to be passed down when checkout ultimately creates that underlying subscription object. Subscription is the primitive that we don't actually have to worry about or deal with very much, because Stripe Checkout is handling all of that for us. But one thing we want to do is we want to specify that the subscription should have a trial period that is maybe 14 days long. So just by doing that, that is going to enable a subscription trial. Now, in addition to passing trial period days of 14, we can also now say payment method collection and pass it the string value if required. We only need to collect payment method if it's required. So let's go back through the flow. I think I need to restart my server here. All right, localhost 4242, and we're back in the flow. Let's use the professional price this time. And now we see we get 14 days free, then $18 per month after, and we can enter in an email address here and say that we want to start the trial. What's amazing is that before we got access to this new starting subscriptions on trial without payment method up front, we would ask users to go and implement this themselves. So basically, this was kind of like all on you to go and figure out how you wanted to deal with free trials and maintaining, two lists essentially of your customers that are on a trial versus your customers that have their subscriptions set up inside of Stripe. But now you can do it all directly through one interface, and that is just send everyone through Stripe checkout, and it's just going to work. Now, what's really cool about this demo is we have this manage billing button at the bottom, and the customer portal is where you would send customers anytime during that trial or when the trial expires, as soon as you want them to add a payment method type. It is our recommendation that this is where you're going to send those customers. I'm going to pause there for a second and see if there's anything to add. I'm like so pumped about this, and I want to also talk about the no code portal. So let's, curious if there's any questions in the chat.
CJ, I don't know what you had for breakfast this morning, but I feel like your energy level is like through the roof right now, and I love it. I appreciate it.
It's great. No, it's great. This is such a fun product to build with, and I feel like you as developers out there can go out and start making money online so simply now. I mean, you otherwise would have had to build so many things, and like localizing in all these different languages and supporting ACH and credit. There's just so much to build. And the fact that you have access to this with just a couple API calls and redirects is just, it's awesome. And it's so fun to build with. So
yeah, I do agree with you. I do think it's awesome. And I'm sure a lot of folks in the chat as well, like agree with you. Here's our friend Emily coming in from YouTube, and Emily's saying, it gives us the confidence to integrate something as intimidating as payments. And I think that's a sentiment shared by a lot of developers, right? Like when you think about payments, like that's not a trivial feature to add to your application, right? Like there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, and you think about security, you think about charging people the right amounts, and how do I handle refunds, and how do I handle like different locales and different payment methods, and right? Like there's so many complex systems that happen in the back end. And so for us to have something like Stripe Checkout, I think is amazing because, again, like you said, like it's like code optional, right? Like I don't have to write code, but I can. But either way, it's like a very welcoming path, right? Like it's a very accessible path for me to kind of go into my app. Interestingly enough, like last week when we had our first video, our first stream for Checkout Month, Randu from the UK, who was our guest, he said, he uses checkout in so many of our products, and his one complaint, I'm going to tell you the bad things, his one complaint was he wished we would have launched it sooner. And I told you, I did not pay him to say that. Like, I did not. He said that himself. He's like, the only thing that he wished was that we launched it sooner, because again, it just kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think we're all, CJ, we're all with you with like how excited we're about the product. I think it's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, the one other thing that I would emphasize is that, as CJ goes through this demo and showcases each of these different components of the payment acceptance process and recurring billing process, we're always thinking about more and more ways that we can take some of that overhead off of your shoulders so that we can worry about the payments parts. We can worry about optimizing for conversion and making sure you get to that highest AOV possible, so that you can really focus on building your core product. And so I would just encourage you to also start a dialogue with Stripe if there are moments in your flow where you don't maybe want to actually be writing this code. And maybe this is a flow that many other merchants or many other businesses in your line of work are actually creating. Maybe that's something that we can build for you and take off of your plate. And so feel free to reach out to us if there are other products on top of or adjacent to Checkout and the billing customer portal that maybe we could build into Stripe.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And so kind of like what Josh is saying, you could look under his lower third there and you could see like, there's his Twitter handle, there's CJ's Twitter handle. We can also tweet us at stripe_dev on Twitter. There's a lot of different ways to reach out to the team. So please would love to hear from you and hear what your thoughts are, any suggestions, your successes, your failures, everything. So we can always just make the best possible product. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, CJ, what else you got for us, man?
Okay, so I mean, I could do this for hours and hours and hours.
CJ,
So
we got half an hour.
Half an hour. Okay, so I'm going to speed through this. So I want to add a payment method here. Actually, before we add a payment method, what I wanted to talk about was, when someone starts a trial that's going to last 14 days, it can be challenging to think about, okay, how am I going to build my my automations and my webhook logic that's going to, maybe provision access or deprovision access for someone based on their trial ending. And so there is this really handy feature of the API called a test clock. And I wanted to show that to you really quick. This is another sort of like bonus round thing. So before we create our checkout session, one of the things that we can pass in when we're creating the checkout session is reference to an existing Stripe customer. So what we could do is before we actually create our checkout session, we could say, customer is Stripe customer dot create, and then we could pass in its ID under the customer argument here by saying customer.id. That's how we can associate a checkout session with an existing customer. Now, you might imagine this customer is created during the signup flow or in some other part of your application, and you're going to store off that Stripe customer ID alongside your authenticated user. For the demo, I'm just going to hit the API right here, create a customer, and we're going to use that customer's ID when we create the checkout session. Now, this is where it gets a little fancy because we're going to create a test clock, and a test clock is going to allow us to simulate moving through time. It's really cool. So we're going to say test helpers, test clock.create, and a test clock expects that we pass in at least a frozen time, and that's going to be time.now. And we're going to pass in, this is going to be a Unix timestamp that we're passing in to create that test clock. And then when we create the customer, we're going to associate that brand new customer with a test clock. So we're going to say this test clock is going to be test clock.id. And now the subscription that results when we finally go through the checkout flow is going to be also associated with this test clock. So any events that are going to fire, those webhook events that are going to fire related to that subscription, we'll be able to simulate by moving our test clock forward. So let's say we start the trial today, and it's a 14-day free trial. We can then take that test clock, advance it 15 days, and look at all the webhooks that are going to fire on our account. So let's just do that. Okay, so right here we have our test clock. I think that all should work and fire up okay. So I'm going to restart my server. We're going to head back over to localhost 4242. And now when we say, redirect me back to Stripe checkout, one of the things that we'll see is that we should have a new test clock created for a specific customer. So now if we enter in maybe test.example.com and say start trial, once that subscription is created, we can head over to the dashboard and look at our customers, and you'll see this test customer at the very top here has this special orange clock next to their name. So if we drill into that customer, you'll see that there's this huge banner across the top. This is it's in a clock simulation. It's pinned to this specific time. That's because this is the time that we froze the test clock at. So we can see that the starter subscription right now, it says that the trial is going to end on September 28th. But what we can do is we can say, we want to advance time. So join me in our time machine. We're going to go on a little trip here and say, let's just jump directly to the end of the month. So we're going to advance time to the end of the month. But before we do so, what I want to do is start logging out the events that are firing. So we have a sense of what's happening on our Stripe account. So we can say Stripe, listen, -- forward to localhost 4242/webhook. Now, this is going to form a direct connection between Stripe and our local running server. It's going to forward events that are happening on our Stripe account to our local server so we can build automations around those. We haven't implemented any automations yet, but in the logs for this listen command, we'll be able to see the different events that are firing. So let's advance time to September 30. And Chris Oliver is hopping in the time machine with us. So, all right, let's go. Here we go. Okay, so we've got test helper, test clock advancing. This is the first event that we see. Now we see there's an upcoming invoice, and then we see that the customer subscriptions trial will end. So this is the event. This is like a very special event that tells us the trial is going to end. And if the customer doesn't already have a payment method on file, then we want to make sure that we're converting them to paying customers. And so what we can do is we can grab that event type, jump back over to our server, head down to our webhook handler, and we can add a new check here for this specific event type. So we can say if the event type is equal to this trial will end event, then we want to print out like, okay, send an email. In practice, we would actually send them an email, send an email to the customer with a link to the portal. What's really neat is that instead of having to come up with a unique customer portal address for every single customer, now, if we go to the settings and under the billing section, there's this customer portal section. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's this brand new no-code customer portal. If you don't see a link here, there's going to be a button to generate a link. We're going to copy that. And this is a no-code way for people to go and manage their billing. All right, so we will restart our server to get that new webhook logic going. And
so I think that's cool, but yes. I know I gotta try and get in as you're showing us all the amazing stuff.
Yes.
So you copy that link.
Yeah.
What if I'm writing an application and I do I have to copy that link every time I'm putting in my code, or is there like an API? If I wanted to write code, is there an API that I could call to get like that link?
Yeah, so actually like the typical way, and until very recently, this is like brand new. This no-code portal is brand new, but until we release the no-code portal, you would have to make another separate API call to create a billing portal session and redirect customers the same way you would with Stripe Checkout. Yeah, so very similar API where you pass in the customer's ID and then you get back a session that has a URL on it and you could redirect to that URL.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, so this is really neat because this will send emails and use like magic link authentication in order to work with your payment flows. So this button here in the demo. So if you install the Checkout Single Subscription demo, then when you click on this Manage Billing button, that's going to make the post request to the server that's going to use the API to redirect. So if you're curious about the code for that, you can head over to the sample and take a look at the code that's here.
Nice. So what I love about this is that like you're showing us both options, right? You're showing us as a developer, I could choose again to write code or not to write code. Like I can go into the portal and I could copy some links and I could, have like that payment experience customized to the way that makes sense for my business. Or I could write some code and I can customize it that way. But either way, we have the option to choose what path we go down as we're using Stripe Checkout.
Exactly. So I entered in a new customer that went through the flow. We've got a simulation here. We're going to jump to the end of the month. I'm going to advance.
I love how we're just like jumping through time and we're looking at it like it's normal. This is normal. We're just going to fast forward through time right now.
It's so fun, right? Like I think this is also, there is a sort of in the test-driven development industry, there are a lot of tools for simulating different time scenarios when you're trying to test time-driven things. But this is the first time in my experience that I've ever seen this done with an API, and it makes it really, really fun to test and build against webhooks, which are all of these events that are going to fire in the future that you would otherwise have to actually wait like 14 days to get this event and then hope that you actually caught it. And maybe you had an error and you got to wait 14 more days. Yeah. So we're going to click on that link that brings us to the no-code portal. So this is the actual no-code portal. I'm going to enter an email here. Don't spam this email. Okay, so now we wait for a couple seconds.
So I'm guessing what's going to happen now in the back end, Stripe is going to obviously shoot out an email. It's going to go to your account. You're going to get some code. And then, on your phone or okay, there you go.
Yeah, right? You can't actually see
code. Yeah, CJ got a code, but then now, again, like for security purposes, right? Like he gets a validation token or a validation code. He's going to put it in here. And then now you're going to get redirected to the portal, right? There we go.
That's right. Yeah. So this is all, again, like you could totally combine, pricing table plus the no-code customer portal and have a fully functional SaaS application. You can combine just a payment link that is a subscription-based payment link, and you would have a full functionality here. One question I have for Josh is, now that we have support for these kinds of features natively in checkout, how quickly do those land inside of the other tools? So, the pricing table, I don't actually know, is this available, the trial, like, starting a trial without payment details? Is that part of pricing table yet? Is it part of payment links yet? How does that all sort of upstream?
Totally. You'll see when we launch new products and features, both upstream and downstream of checkout, that we try and bring as many features as we possibly can to them as soon as they launch to GA for everyone to start using. And you'll see all the details about these products in our docs. The thing that I want to emphasize is that sometimes we get requests to bring additional Stripe functionality to these features, or even to build brand new functionality that doesn't yet exist. And so we're constantly iterating on these products and bringing new features to them. I'm going to give you a quick example of both. And this is an early preview of what's to come with our product roadmap.
Sure.
Which is on the pricing table side that CJ has mentioned. We launched the pricing table just a few months ago, and it's gotten incredible reception. And we're seeing the vast majority of new founders who are coming to Stripe, starting SaaS businesses, are actually using pricing table to get started, which is really exciting.
Nice.
But there are actually two big things that we're missing from pricing table that are soon going to launch. The first being the ability to leverage a custom CTA. So if you want to send your customer to maybe a contact us form for a sales process, that's going to be coming to pricing table. In addition, the Stripe billing logic encompasses a tremendous amount of information in regards to tiered pricing. And we're going to bring all of that to pricing table too. And so we're just trying to make sure that regardless of what your business model is, the Stripe products will serve your needs really well. And by the way, if there's ever a use case or need that maybe we don't perfectly serve, please reach out to us, whether it's via Discord, Twitter, etc. And we'd love to support your use case as quickly as we can.
Nice.
Super cool. I think every time I turn around, checkout is like adding new stuff, shipping new things. It is really, really hard to keep up. So I think, yes, one thing that I missed that launched without my knowing was support for metered billing inside of Stripe checkout. So I want to change gears a little bit. We saw how you can set up a subscription without a trial, but I built this little demo here. It's called Hypebot. It's actually really, really fun. So I wanted to run through it just very quickly. So the way that it works is you connect your YouTube account and you can view the videos that you've posted on your YouTube account. So we've got like tons and tons of videos here. I don't know, like some of these are not live yet, so they're not going to work. So here we go. Postgres in Rails with enums. Okay, so what this tool does is it allows you to automatically generate tweets based on the transcript of the video. So it uses the YouTube API to pull in your transcripts, and then it uses OpenAI to automatically generate tweets for you. So you kind of like have to I'm going to edit like the script a little bit so that I don't get charged too much. But what happens is every single time you use OpenAI, you have to pay a little bit of money. So I'm going to update the transcript here and say, think of a tweet. So now this is going to go off to OpenAI, and it just thought of this tweet. So new episode of Rails event data is up. We're going to learn a ton about enums and some recent releases, blah, blah, blah. It's like a way to help promote your videos. And so as you're going through and using this application, and we're sort of like passing a bunch of data to OpenAI, and then OpenAI is returning some responses. Every time we use OpenAI, we have to spend a little bit of money. So it's going to cost sort of like fractions of a dollar every time we send a token, which it might be a word or it might be, some parts of a word or whatever. And so in order to charge and to align the value that you're getting as a customer with the amount that you have to pay, what you can do is build out a pricing model that might be something like this, where you have a fixed $20 a month flat fee plus some number of cents per 1,000 tokens. So this is actually like a pretty advanced business model, right? And so I was actually surprised to know, or like to learn that you can do this directly with Stripe Checkout. So here again, we're going through the checkout flow, and we can see that we have our fixed $20 amount that we're going to be charged. And then it says price varies, and you're going to be charged 7 cents for every 1,000. So we can go through the subscribe flow, and that's going to create a brand new subscription for us that will have subscription items. Now, when you have a subscription that has 2 line items like that, one of them is going to have, or like the resulting subscription is going to have 2 subscription items on it. One of them will be for that fixed price that is the term that we use inside of the API is licensed. So you're going to have a price that's licensed, and then you're going to have another price that's metered. And that metered price is the one that we're going to use for in order to report the usage records. So every time someone goes and generates one of those tweets using OpenAI, we're actually going to report a usage record. And so this is the API call that we're going to use to send Stripe the subscription item. That's the metered subscription item on the subscription. And then we're going to pass a little bit of data about how many things they used. So this might be minutes that they used inside of their hosting platform, like Hatchbox, which is Chris Oliver's tool. And I know that Chris Oliver just started using some metered billing stuff too. So if you have any feedback, we would love to hear that. I don't actually know if you're using Checkout though for that. So either way, let us know. So here what we're doing is the suggestion, that's kind of like the generated data that we're getting back from OpenAI. That's going to have a number on it that says, how many tokens did we spend while trying to generate that tweet? And we can use that as the quantity that we're sending to Stripe. So what's really cool is if we go to the Stripe dashboard here, I've got to switch up to this other Stripe account. And if we look at the top customer here, you can see I've generated quite a few of these. But if we look at, let's look at this one here. You'll see that the usage records are being reported, and you can view their usage directly here in the Stripe dashboard. You can tell how many units were used. And because we used, because we used 291 of 1,000, it's rounding up to 7 cents. So this is really, really cool stuff. Again, all of this supports is supported by the customer portal. Now, the customer portal doesn't have the ability to look and see exactly, this is how many usage records, but inside of the customer portal, you can look at your invoices. So here we might scroll down and say like, okay, this is, Hypebot Studio standard, and we're spending some amount of tokens on our usage every time that we're generating those tweets. Very cool stuff. I just wanted to I wanted to show that we can walk through that entire flow with the usage and report usage records, and that subscription is fully created with Stripe Checkout. So really fun stuff. Also, one thing I wanted to note before we come to a close here was that we have some new content coming that's going to show you how to use Stripe Checkout to start a subscription, and then a little bit more advanced use cases with subscription schedules so that you can build some really advanced things like installment plans where someone pays a certain amount each month for a fixed number of months. And so we're also going to show how to upgrade at the end of the cycle or downgrade at the end of the cycle. These are all things that you can do with subscription schedules attached to those subscriptions that are created with Stripe Checkout. So that's like the 2 demos that I've got for us today. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks a ton for letting me on.
I feel like my mind has just been blown. Like I'm going to have to rewatch this video and like take notes and try to remember like all of the different things that you've shown us. But that was amazing, man. Like definitely thank you for showing us that. Particularly the test clock ones was particularly interesting for me. Because again, it's not something that we see a lot of the time. It's not something that you often see. Oh, wow. Like I need to test this subscription. Like how can I go forward and backward in time, right? Like how can we control some of these things? So I definitely think that was really, really cool for us to see. And obviously too, with like being able to manage my subscription and seeing some of those options with how I can have like a base price and then like you said, like a per 1,000, I'm going to charge you this much, right? And then now we'll have Stripe handling like that calculation and that math for me because, developers were lazy, right? Like we don't want to do math. We just write a white code and like kind of like get to it, right? So I think that was pretty cool. So Josh, for you, like, so now we've seen all these really cool things about checkout. I guess what I'd really love to know is maybe for the next couple of months or weeks or, your next cycle, like what are some of the things that you're thinking about or what are some of the things that the team is thinking about in terms of new features and a roadmap and just, like this different types of support that you're going to add to checkout?
For sure. I think there are two really big themes that we think about when we're considering improving checkout. The first is improving customization. So what are ways that we can make checkout feel even more native, regardless of what business you're using? We want the checkout experience to feel super seamless for all of your customers. And so we're really focused on each of those different kinds of customization options. And you've probably seen us invest in this over the course of the past few months in launching custom fonts, custom buttons, custom colors, custom domains. We're all about the customization. The second thing that we're really building is a lot that will fit your use case. So for example, for SaaS merchants, we're building features and functionality specific to the SaaS use case. For e-commerce merchants, we're building features and functionality specific to the e-commerce use case. And so if there are features that we can build to take some of the weight off your shoulders, please let us know.
Yeah. One of the things I often think about, and I'm sure you do as well, is like what happens when my business starts to scale, right? Like what happens when I start to reach out to different audiences, not just more audiences in the same place, but then also different locales, right? Like I might have a company here in Florida, right? And I want to reach out and go to Canada, and I want to go to South America, and I want to go to the UK, right? Like how does checkout help me do some of those type of things? Like in terms of, I don't know, just supporting different payment methods and supporting different types of currencies, and even like, I don't know, maybe I need my form to be in Spanish. Like how can I do some of that scaling without, again, like having to write code, right? And having to know a lot about like the engine that's behind Stripe Checkout.
Totally. So the great news here is that Stripe is live today and supports businesses running in 47 different countries.
Mhm.
But the reality is that y'all probably have buyers that are all over the world. And so our goal was to make it as easy as possible to ensure that we support all of those buyers, regardless of where they're located. We do this through a combination of different ways. Way number one is we support over 135 different currencies. So all of those currencies can be enabled via Stripe so that you can sell your products to your customers in their local currency. The second thing that we do is we offer localization. So when I think about localization, not just in terms of currency, we're also thinking about this in terms of the language. So checkout is actually in over 30 different languages. The second thing we do is we have different payment methods. So checkout supports over 20 different payment methods so that your customers, regardless of where they're located, they have a payment option that is native to what they use in their country. Here in the US, we're obviously really familiar with cards, whether they be debit cards, credit cards, and some express checkout options like Apple Pay and Google Pay. But as soon as you take one step outside the US, there are so many different options that we can provide that aren't necessarily as common here. One last thing I'll mention is that we're also focused on different payment methods that are deeply related to specific business models. So for example, we're focused on bank transfers like ACH for SaaS businesses, because we know that that's a really common way that y'all accept payments for SaaS functionality.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I can imagine anyone that's building a business, right? Like as I make a choice on a technology decision, like I'm hoping like that decision is going to grow with me. Right. So again, if I build my stuff on Ruby or I write it with Node or .NET, in 10 years, I'm not expecting to rewrite that application, right? Like, but I'm expecting to add to it, and I'm expecting it to expand with me. Just like if I select like an authorization provider, just like if I, accept like a payments and a billing provider, right? I'm not going to expect to get rid of it later. But then as I'm moving out to some of these other companies and I'm expanding some of these other countries, I'm sorry, not companies, but other countries, I'm thinking, okay, are the choices that I'm making in terms of like hosting models and payments and technology stack and localization, like are these things going to grow with me? And again, as I think about Stripe, again, it's a piece of my puzzle, right? But it's also a piece that I want to rely on the experts to like help me make the right choices. And I kind of feel like, again, with checkout, I could write a little bit less code and still have the company make the right choice for me, like still have Stripe make the right choice for me. Again, localization and PCI compliance and like all of these different types of things that like I'm just like I don't want to touch that stuff, right? Like I just want to chill out.
We
right?
just want to take all that stuff off your shoulders. And we really think about this in two different dimensions. The first is that once you have a successful business on Stripe, we want that business to grow. And we're going to create all the features and functionality that we can pack into Stripe Checkout and even upstream and downstream of checkout so that your existing business can grow and can scale and you can make the most of every customer interaction. The second thing that I want to emphasize that CJ really showcased today in his demos is that, look, your business is probably going to evolve too over the course of the coming years. And maybe you're going to expand into selling different products, trying different business models, figuring out what works as you're on the journey to get to product market fit.
Yeah.
And hopefully CJ's demo today really emphasized the flexibility of checkout so that you can have the option to define a new business model, try going to market with it, and see how sticky it gets.
Yeah. So again, that was great. Again, CJ, Josh, thank you all so much for coming on. We have a couple of minutes left, and just before we cut off, I was just wondering, are there any like final thoughts, anything that, like what would you love for us to do now? Now that we've seen all of this stuff, obviously you want us to use a product, but like where are some of the places do you want us to go? Are there docs coming up? Do you all have events coming up that we should pay attention to? Are there any special betas that we could get into, preview betas beforehand? Like tell us, like, how can we get more involved with what's happening with Stripe Checkout?
Totally. If you go to stripe.com/checkout, you'll actually see that you can obviously click start now. You can jump right into our docs. You can create a Stripe account. One other thing that I want to reference, though, is you'll also see right there front and center is you'll have the option to try our demo. With the Stripe checkout demo, you'll actually be able to set up what your checkout flow would look like. You can turn on and off features and functionality right there in the checkout demo without having to even write any code or create a Stripe account. That is so helpful in being able to visualize all the functionality that's embedded within checkout. And so I'd really encourage all of you to play around with this and give it a try before even jumping in and creating your Stripe account.
Nice. And then I know you also have the pre-built checkout page, like the quick starts. And I think with the quick starts, what I love about them too is that they kind of allow me to get started and try this stuff out, but then it generates code for me, which I think is absolutely amazing. Because again, like the best code is the code that I don't have to write, right? And
100%.
And so I believe what happens, and y'all could correct me. So this is obviously it's on Stripe Docs, but then once you go to the quick start, and if you're signed in, right? Because again, if you're signed in with your Stripe account and you download the demo, it would populate with like all your API keys and your private keys and your session keys for that account that you're signed into. So again, it's not like, this is not like some fluffy code, right? Like this is actually a real concrete, solid demo that I could kind of go in, I could run it and it will work. And literally all I have to do is just sign in and hit the download button. And then now I could kind of start going through what it actually feels like to use Stripe Checkout.
That's exactly right. And this is the best way to just take your first payment, accept that first payment from your customer. But if you take a look at what we're showing here via the screen share, you'll actually see on the left-hand side of the screen, there's the menu, and you can see all the different options under Stripe Checkout. Specifically, yes, exactly, right there. So you'll see there's a ton of different features and functionality. And once you have accepted your first payment, you can actually start customizing checkout with each of the features that we reference. And many of these can be enabled with either no code at all by going into the dashboard and turning on or off some functionality, or even by writing like 1 or 2 lines of code maximum to enable this functionality.
Awesome. Yeah, this is great. So again, folks, if you're interested, make sure you check out that link that's at the bottom of the screen right now. Head over to the Stripe checkout and try out our quick starts, take a look at our docs, rewatch some of these videos that are on this channel because we have a lot of them that talk about Stripe checkout. And again, if you have any questions, anything that you'd love to know about, anything, any type of suggestions, or even just like sharing with us like what your experience was like, we'd definitely love to hear that. But with that being said, I think this is the end of the show, folks. So again, Josh, CJ, thank you all so much for being here. Thank all of you for watching. And we'll see you again next week where we're going to continue talking about Stripe checkout for the entire month of September. All right. Bye, folks.
Thank you.
Bye, friends.